I'm Rod Duff, your host.
And I'm producer Barbie.
And together,
we bring you our podcast,
Insights and Straight Talk. And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. You know, I was talking about how much I love that song, but I was just watching it because I'm actually taking a rest right now, leading back into back-to-back shows, as it turns out. Oh, I forgot to ask you, and let me know when we come a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I can see you. You can't hear me. I can't hear you, but do you have a hard stop? Are you okay? I have no hard stop. Okay, good. Because obviously now we're starting 20 minutes later, so an hour, where I very seriously doubt with your subject matter, what we're talking about here, the empowerment. And by the way, I really want to get into the neurodivergent. So anyway, I'll get in, folks, with Rachel. Now I'm scared. Rachel's. That's right. Yeah, Rachel's. You guys know my history. I'm fascinated by names and accents. And I think the reason I'm fascinated by names is because I'm so terrible with it. We're streaming live here on Facebook. I want to say Instagram, which we are on Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. And then we also stream live on TikTok, where we discuss this show, the show today or the show earlier, meaning both of them. Today, I'm not going to do that because, as you guys know, I'm actually going to be leaving here in a few hours. Not a few. Later on in the evening, I'm going to do a drive-through, not a drive-by. Don't mix that up. That one word makes a big deal. As you know, moving to Oklahoma, closer to my grandkids. But I'm bringing the dogs in a cot, and I'm looking at 3 homes with my pocketbook in my pocket. I'm going to buy one of them. I really have a favorite towards one, but I'm going to be an Okie. Set everything up to be able to be there and set up by the end of July, the 31st. I've closed all this stuff down. I'm going to be moving it all down into a home. This first time I'm going to have a home. I've had lots of homes, but it's me versus, partner, or, traditional family situation. Okay. Hey, you know what? Okay. I got to tell you, Rachel, they're coming in a little quicker here. We got 6 people diving in already. Appreciate you guys being here. And we've got a great story that we're getting into today. And it's been a great day. And like we were talking in the last show, I think we're at 250 now. We may be at like 248 or something. As far as the shows, the episodes that we have done since we started live episode. So this used to be something different. It was just insights, and we did a lot of industrial leaders because I've been in the machinery building business I built it up over 30 years. So then I started to want to wind that down, and there's a whole mental thing that you guys all know about. But today is about empowerment of women. As I said, I wanted to get into that neurodivergency and some of the tools that Rachel Radway, love that, R&R, is part of her journey, part of her. Oh, one thing I didn't say, we didn't talk about. I was rushing through it. My fault, guys. I'm really sorry about being late. I always say, hey, it's really important you're here at least 7 minutes early. And I'm looking at the clock, and so was my guest. I was telling him, look, we got to move. I don't want to miss a single thing, because it was an amazing topic about mental health. And very interesting techniques. And when I say techniques, I mean real stuff, and we aren't on that right now. So go check out that episode that was at 12:30 today, my time. It's now 2:40, 2:45. Got 16 people coming on. I appreciate you guys jumping in here. The discussion today, let me just read this to you. It's awesome, because helping high achieving, highly sensitive So I'm curious where we're going to dig into a little bit here. Highly sensitive and or neurodivergent. So we've got some transition here potentially from having a deficit or a not, I don't want to go as far as disorder or anything like that, but we're talking about being able to be highly achieving while dealing with these other things that typically would want to block your way in getting to that next rung and that next rung and building that life. Women lead with confidence, clarity, and authenticity. And you guys know we talk a lot about being authenticity. Being authenticity? Well, I guess that kind of works. Being authentic. Because this was built from a point where, JR, I'm Rod, but I developed this. I was given a nickname when I first started in the industry. Long story behind that, which you all probably know. But I had a mask that because I wasn't confident. Rod wasn't confident. So I created this way around that and started into hiding behind a mask and just building up a life that was not authentic. Nobody knew it on the outside necessarily, except I was a bit of a jerk at times and all those bad things that go along with that. But I'll tell you what, I've really grown a lot. The show has really done a lot because now it's, instead of just insights, we still have that playlist. We have a playlist for one's called the Jetsons Knew What Is Coming. And it's about AI and automation and all that. This is, as you guys know, and I repeat this as much for the guests as for people who may be on now that aren't regular followers on each episode. But we have each of these different playlists, and one of them is mental health. Actually, it's called. Now I forgot, but it's about working within, working on the inner child, working on the authentic, working on how to be authentic, naturally, of course. And one thing I didn't talk to you about, Rachel, is that would you please, as we're talking, as we begin the talk, actually, when I let you talk, which I should already be doing, but start where your journey began. In other words, you don't have to go back to birth, although I have had a couple of people do that, and it made sense after. But I shouldn't even bring that up. But start where it started. What led you to this? I mean, there's experiences that affected your life to bring you onto a journey. So would you let's start building from there. And usually it's about 10 minutes when people are coming in. So I didn't leave you very much time, but I'll let the questions go by and comments go by. But please backfill, do some why, how, what happened, what's the history, what's the color between the layers of why you're here. And the only reason I say that is because I want my newest best friend, Rachel, to come and meet my family. How you doing, girl?
Hi, Rod. Good to see you. Thank you for bringing me on.
Very, very much a pleasure. So I didn't leave you a lot of room here. We're already at 45 people here. And I talked up most of the room I gave you to give that first part. And I just let you know about it. What a great show you're just walking. Hey, this is the show where I'm just going to set you up left and right, and you can have with it.
It's definitely different. I can tell you that much. I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Go start on the journey that led to the journey.
I will do that. I'm actually going to start part of the way back in 2014 when I was a director of global content at a large global enterprise, financial services, a Fortune 500
I saw that.
company.
Nice.
And I was so burned out that I ended up I ended up quitting my job, selling my home, and moving to rural Peru to find that space that I needed to start to heal and to recover.
What did I tell you? Hold on. What did I tell you? about 10 minutes, they're going to start coming in with questions. 10:20, they start coming in with questions. So I know my peeps. I know my peeps. So you went to Peru. From where? Where were you living at the time?
I was living in the Bay Area,
214.
in the San Francisco
The
Bay
Bay Area.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and then you went to Peru. I assume some development, some reflection because of what was going on when you quit your job, sold your home, and got the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah, there were a lot of reasons why I chose Peru specifically, but I needed to just be for a while, and I couldn't do that in the Bay Area. I had a mortgage. I couldn't pay my mortgage if I wasn't working, and I realized I couldn't keep working. I really, really needed to take time off. So I moved to Peru.
Ooh,
I was
connecting dots here.
Yeah.
Connecting dots here. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent about 4 months in Peru, ended up moving to Ecuador, where I bought a little adobe house in the Ecuadorian Andes. From there, moved to a couple of other places. But basically ended up taking what I call an extended sabbatical to heal. It was a healing journey. When I finally came back to the States, and then there was a little side note where I came back to the States, ended up getting a job in Portugal, and then moved back to, ended up getting a job in Switzerland after Portugal, moved back to the States. There's lots of stories in there.
I saw how many countries and states and so forth that you lived in. I know that feeling, and the places that you've lived are pretty spectacular, though, too. The energy in them.
They've been pretty amazing, and there were reasons for all of them. Switzerland is probably the one I was least happy about. That was actually for a job, and most of the others weren't. So
that was mostly what? Mostly what?
That was for a job. Switzerland.
Okay, gotcha.
For a job, I had gotten a job offer there, and the other countries I chose specifically because I wanted to be in that country. Switzerland, different. I just went because it was a job offer. Anyway, years later, I came back to the States. I ended up doing something that I had said that I wasn't going to do, which was go back into the tech world, and went back to my roots into a content strategy, a writing role, which was something I had done really, really early on in my career.
Hold on. I want to make sure that a content strategy, so like marketing content provider.
Actually, so product content. So when you're a tech company in the product space, writing content and designing the strategy around the user interface text, for example. So what users see, how they learn to use the product, how they navigate around the product.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's what I've done very, very early on in my career. From there, I ended up getting into a different career, a different role, which was design operations, still working with the same team, but taking on a more operations role and a support role for the team itself. So I was directly involved in hosting the leadership teams and working closely with leadership to make sure that everybody on the team was supported, was engaged, had what they needed to do the best job that they could. And a lot of it was employee engagement, morale. We actually had 0% attrition on my team in 2021, which was
that's a big deal.
Resignation. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I got laid off from that job, which was not the first time. I've been laid off many times. That's what happens when you work in tech. But I finally decided to do something with that I had wanted to for a long time. And I went and I got trained and certified as a coach. And that was the start of the current chapter of the journey. As a coach, while I was still trying to figure out really who I wanted to focus on, I was trained and certified in something called solutions-focused coaching. I knew that I wanted to work with women leaders. What I didn't realize till a little bit later was that all of the women leaders who were drawn to me shared certain traits. They were all what I'm going to call for now highly sensitive. I don't use that term a lot, and I specifically don't use it with my leaders because in our culture, sensitivity can be seen as a flaw, as a weakness. It's stigmatized wrongly but it is stigmatized.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the term that I use now is perceptive. And I wrote a book called Perceptive. And
hold on a second. Hold on, because I'm reading this wrong then. So when you say sensitivity, you don't mean feelings. You mean sensitive to the environment, sensitive to being able to pull in what's happening. We talked a little bit about this even last show where you could walk into a room and kind of read the room without reading the room, but something's off. They're not yelling, but right? Is that what you mean?
Yes. And so I talk about one of the images that I use is, when you're doing a sound mixer and you've got a whole mixer in front of you with lots and lots and lots of channels, and you're moving the levers, I forget what they're called, back and forth, up and down. You can be sensitive to dozens and dozens and dozens of things. It includes both environmental sensitivities, so sound and lighting and color and texture and sense.
Okay.
And cigarette smoke and different kinds of foods and anything, any environmental stimulus you can be sensitive to. You can also be sensitive to emotions, to energies, to anything going on in the world. And everyone has a different combination of things that they're sensitive to and things that they're not. There is about 30% of the population is more highly sensitive, which can mean that they are sensitive to more of those things, and they're more sensitive than other people typically are. So everybody's sensitive to something, but it may just be one or two things, or it may be one thing that they're very, very sensitive to. The sensitivity I'm talking about is a combination of those things that that can work in a lot of different ways, and it's different for every person. I did just notice that you've got me with Todd Martin in the
yeah. So how can highly sensitive women, now there's a series of questions that are very similar to this, build confidence in.
Is that a question that came in? Is Todd Martin?
Yeah, that
question. Okay.
Yeah, so you're going to see these. Remember when we were first starting? I'm going to pop those over. I was just leaving that for lead up because you're not there yet. You're not there yet.
All good. Okay. So this trait is I'm gonna back up a little bit. There was a psychologist in the late 1990s named Elaine Aron, and she was the first person to talk about this particular trait. The research shows that about 30% of the population has what she calls high sensitivity. Again, not a good term because it does sound like exactly what you were suggesting. It sounds like, I'm very, very sensitive to emotions and I cry easily. That may be true, but there are reasons for that, and it may come with a variety of other things. It also comes with a set of superpowers. And the way I talk about it in the book, they're all two sides.
Do you have a book? Hold on. Do you have a book around you?
So it's.
Well, that's a nice cover. Perceptive.
Thank you.
Perceptive. Yeah.
And the subtitle is Insights for Leaders Who Feel More, Process Deeply, and Think Differently. Because there are different aspects to this trait.
Totally different leadership style here. I can already start to see that emergence. By the way, before we go, and that not when we get a chance, and I think we talked. Did we talk? No, we didn't talk about it. Put your contact information in the private chat. Not right this. If you can, go ahead. But
Sure.
I won't. I'm not going to switch it over till closer to the end because I want it at the end so people can find it here instead of in the middle of the questions. But what I'm saying is, whatever contact information, your book website or your own website or email, some people give their cell phones, whatever, but whatever information you want, I know. Actually, what was funny when I said that, we had a 3-time Emmy winning producer, very high end kind of Hollywood person, right? And she gave her, and she's doing this similar kind of thing as far as building up with it. She gave her cell phone number and said, please, I want to talk to you guys. I'm like, wow, okay. I hope she's not getting smashed right now. Bring, bring, bring. So, okay. I see you got it in there. So go ahead with your story. Sorry about that. I just wanted to, I wanted to make sure not forget that because it's been a bit of I'm kind of running in fast right now. I want to make sure I don't miss anything.
That's okay. So I'm gonna fast forward a little bit to back to the sensitivity part. So the person that came up with the term perceptive and that I eventually used as the title of the book was a publisher who reached out to me after I had started my business and started focusing on this particular population. And I explained the challenge to him. Women leaders do not want to be thought of as sensitive. There are a number of reasons for that. As I mentioned, there is a stigma in our culture. A lot of the clients I work with have been hearing their entire lives, you're too much, you're not enough, you're broken, you don't do things the right way, you're too sensitive, you need to grow a thicker skin. And my message is none of those things are true. You have gifts, you have superpowers. It may not always feel that way when everyone else has always been focusing on the things that are challenges for you. But as I said, it's two sides of the same coin. The gifts are part of the same coin as the challenges. And when you learn that those really are gifts and you learn to embrace them and to leverage them, you can then handle the challenges more effectively. And what I love talking about and what
hold on, let me I hope I told you about this because I'm going to interrupt you periodically because you're the guest. I'm sorry, you're the expert. Of course, you're the guest. But if I understand it, I'm the safety net. If I understand it, or you're going to come up with you're going to use some terminology that we as the learners aren't familiar with. So I may stop you. So literally the point I've got, whoa, hold on there. You're not going any further. What do you mean by that? What does that look like? What you were just talking about?
So you mean the gifts and the challenges? Is that what you're asking?
So correct. So what is that? Go ahead. Sorry.
So yes, so it's a lot of what I talk about in the book. So some of the challenges are, for example, having been told that you're too sensitive or that you are, too emotional, right? You mentioned a little bit earlier the ability to read a room. The positive side of that emotional sensitivity is a very deep empathy. The people that I work with tend to be able to read a room, to understand nonverbal communication, to be intuitive, to be empathetic. They're the ones who understand that when you're leading a team, you have a team and they need to work together. But the team is made up of individuals, and each individual has different motivations, different inspirations, different goals, different challenges. And you need to be able to understand each of those people individually to help the collective, to help the team be able to work more effectively together. Yes. Those are things that the people that I work with tend to have in spades. They're really, really good at. Here's another challenge for you. Years ago in my corporate career, because I was in corporate for 30 years, I got feedback from a 360 review, one of my, a performance review feedback session with my boss. Mm-hmm. She told me that I was perceived as not being a team player, as stomping on other people's ideas. And that crushed me. I actually cried when I heard that feedback because I was all about supporting the team and being there and bringing in what people needed and wanted. And so the fact that people saw me that way was completely crushing to me. What I learned later.
And probably came out of left field, right?
It did.
Left
absolutely.
Field, right?
Absolutely. I had no idea where that was coming from. It was absolutely the antithesis of my intentions, right?
I get that, yeah.
What I found out was, so I'm going to interrupt myself a little bit too. There's a book called The Brain of the Highly Sensitive Person. It is an amazing book. It was written by a Dutch researcher named Esther Bergsma, and I quote her a lot in the book. Esther and I have actually talked several times, and she's brilliant. And
was she one of the ones in nope. Okay, go ahead. Sorry. I'm looking at your contact information. I didn't know.
No, she's not in there, but she's great. And I recommend the book for anybody who wants to dig deeper into the brain science part of this. Highly sensitive brains have been shown to be different than brains that are not highly sensitive. I'm not going to go into all the ways why and how, because that's not my area of expertise. But one of the things that we know now is that people with brains that are highly sensitive tend to optimize for successful group outcomes. What that means is they don't necessarily have their own agendas. That can be really foreign to people like this. They want the group to succeed. They also tend to, all right, so there are data out there that say that regular brains subconsciously pull in something like, don't quote me on the number, but some crazy number, like 40 or 50 million pieces of information per second. That's subconsciously. We are filtering all that out so that consciously, I think it's 10 or 11 billion. But consciously, we are only processing like 40 or 50, right? So we're filtering a lot out.
Yes.
Highly sensitive brains actually have fewer filters, which means we are taking in more information.
Okay.
Processing more. And there are a lot of things that come out of that. One of them is connecting the dots, and you did this before. We are able to connect dots between pieces of information that not everyone is getting, and sometimes we can do it more quickly than other people. It also leads to things like strategic thinking and being able to leap ahead. So when I am getting information, I am automatically, I'm not doing it intentionally, it just happens. I'm automatically making connections between those pieces of information. If we are in a team brainstorming session, for example, and somebody has an idea, my brain automatically goes to all of the reasons why that idea might not necessarily work, because it's making all of those connections. Again, it's strategic thinking. Because I was optimizing for group outcomes, what I was trying to do, not successfully, but my intention was to move us forward to focus on the ideas that would enable the team to be the most successful, that I could see because I was connecting all of those dots. What I missed was not everybody's brain was doing the same thing that my brain was doing, and not everyone was able to make those same connections. And I wasn't communicating it, I was just doing it. So instead of saying, I think that we're missing, this piece, which is what would get us from this idea to a successful outcome, I just tried to move us forward. And in doing that, people perceived that I was stomping on their ideas, which I totally get, which makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Now that I know that, I can operate very differently. I can communicate what I'm doing. I can keep quiet while the brainstorming portion of the conversation is happening. I can do more explaining. I can do more yes-anding and bring in other parts of the idea that might help those get more successful. So that's one example of the challenges and the gifts being two sides of the same coin.
Wow.
You can't have one without the other, and you just have to figure out, you need to learn about them.
How to use it.
How to use them, exactly.
That's critically important, because reading through the information that we were talking about and leading up to this discussion, it's interesting, the descriptions or the definitions of some of the things we're talking about or that you were describing, and sensitivity is a whole nother like you said, it's basically a negative connotation, which, if not utilized properly, would be. Your alarm just came up for the show. I don't know why it's so late, but which possibly could be negative if you just go around weeping all day. Don't take that wrong. I'm gonna fill in the cracks here. But when you're sensitive, and I get that, because I mean that's almost like, a creative is a sensitive person. Very, very powerful, very this, very that, very this, very that. But they have something that the rest of society, the human experience, the human being really doesn't have, because we're all different. But like you said, the sensitivity now is a powerful thing to use, or be able to use, as long as you do the things you're talking about. Actually, here, in what the message that's coming along, because you need to be able to connect the dots and make sure, and through your experiences, how to be that Superman with a cape. That superpower. I shouldn't have said man. Sorry.
Superhero.
This is about
Yes.
superhero.
I do work with both men and women, but
Oh, you do? Okay. I didn't. I read that in there, but I wasn't quite sure, so I didn't. Honestly, it is.
No.
We have about 60-40 split men, women, 18 to 24. We have about 39%, 40 up to 45. So. That's awesome. I'm glad you said that, because I kind of sold it a little bit different. Not sold it. I kind of described it a little bit different. So come on, keep going.
No, I do. I work with both. I do have more women clients than men.
Which makes sense.
The sensitivity, the trait is gender neutral. It affects all genders the same trait. And
meaning being sensitive? Meaning being sensitive?
So yes.
Build on that, please.
So men and women, all genders, because we don't just have two genders now, right? We have multiple genders. Anyone can be sensitive to anything. There is no, it is a gender agnostic trait. That said, in the research that I've done, specifically among leaders who identify as highly sensitive or highly perceptive, the challenges can manifest in different ways.
Are they the same thing, sensitive and perceptive? Are two sides of the same thing? Two sides of the same thing, maybe?
I think that perceptive encompasses everything that I'm talking about in terms of sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
But it only has positive connotations.
Okay.
I've never heard anybody say anything bad about being perceptive.
Exactly. Good point.
About it, right? So
Yep.
I use them a little bit interchangeably, but I use perceptive now more than I use sensitive, because again, people who don't understand or know hear the word sensitive and often think something negative. So I'm trying to steer us away from that. The other thing is that I get people who come to me who have never heard of the highly sensitive person category that this psychologist I mentioned earlier came up with, that a lot of people have never heard it.
Sure.
But they know personally that they are more sensitive to certain things. They would much rather identify with being highly perceptive. Yeah. It's a term that resonates with everyone.
Yeah, sure.
Back to the gender thing. Those who identify as male and are highly sensitive and highly perceptive do have some challenges. They can sometimes, so you were talking about masking earlier. Masking is a big part of what I talk about in the book for a number of reasons. A lot of men who are more sensitive have to develop a mask because culturally, societally, in a lot of places, men are not supposed to be sensitive. They're not supposed to show emotion. They're not supposed to notice the little things, right?
Yep.
We know that's garbage, right? But that is still an attitude that is held in some places, in some cultures, in some families, right?
It actually, I'll if you don't mind, just kind of blend this comment in. Society has not in some, I mean, it's been a thing for a long time. And, there's this whole male masculinity and all this, and males are trying to they're freaking out from experience of trust, especially the younger ones. They don't want to date anymore because they've been, there's all sorts of crap going on, and they're but with that going on, they're evolving and they're starting to understand things, and society is starting to go, oh, man, we actually need males. We need strong males. We need, but we also need males, which I know we need. No, we don't need males. Males need to be able to expose something. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, you have a mate, and a male gives something up very personal to them. They've opened themselves up. If you ever use that against them, you'll never hear anything from them again, ever. Yeah. And that's what we don't know yet, amongst a billion other things. By the way, you're going to love some of these questions. I'm popping off and going on here, and we're dialing in. They're in line here with you. Do you mind taking a couple of them?
No, I'm happy to take questions.
You good now with that? Because I wanted to go through that journey. We're about 40 minutes in. We haven't even got to a question yet. This is good.
I mean, there's a lot more to the journey, and there's a lot more to neurodivergence. Let me say one more thing, and then we can jump into this.
No. That's why I asked. We're not in a hurry here. We're fine. I don't have to leave. I'm planning on packing up. I'm driving down because I'm taking the dogs. I already told you that story.
Yes.
But I'm leaving at about probably 9 or 10 tonight. Going to drive straight through, probably crash somewhere right before, and then look at the 3 houses and come back with the title. So I've got no real hard stop. And so I'm not pushing you. I'm just making a comment that we're already. So please say everything that fills that in, because these guys, they deserve your story. They deserve the clarity, and it's their time. They're here. I didn't pay them to be here. They're here because they want to be. I couldn't afford to pay these suckers to be here. We got already like a dozen. Actually, Olivia, she's from Turkey. I know her. I worked with her, actually, Chandler. There's like 10 questions, a dozen questions already.
Okay.
So go ahead.
So let me say one more. Give you one more piece of
plenty. Anything you want to make sure that's paved.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to that book that I was talking about, The Brain of the Highly Sensitive Person.
Yes.
Every brain is different. This is just logic, right? We know this. That said, there's a term, neurotypical, and neurotypical. The meaning of it is a brain and a nervous system that function like the typical brain. I personally am going to say, I don't know what a neurotypical brain is. I don't know that any exist. It's a concept I don't believe in.
Yeah.
But there is an othering going on when we talk about neurodiversity and neurodivergence.
I like the othering. That's a good word.
Well, and this is a big part of what I deal with, because if you've been labeled as sensitive all your life, you've been othered, right? And we know, I mean, speaking as someone who is sensitive to just about everything in the universe, I grew up feeling very, very, very other. And I wore a mask my entire life because I was a leader in corporate America. And you can't be a leader in corporate America, especially as a woman, if you are seen as sensitive. It doesn't.
Oh, that's true. That's so true. Absolutely.
So we are all trying to function in a world that was not designed for us.
That hasn't caught up to it. That hasn't caught up to us. I agree. It wasn't designed. I'm not arguing that.
True.
But it hasn't caught up to us because we're better than we were before. No, we're more sophisticated or knowledgeable or all sorts of things than in the 50s. And what you're saying now, the world kind of
is. I don't know that as people we are, but we have more knowledge, certainly, and we have more understanding of the way that things work.
Yes, exactly.
Really, what I want to get at is the fact that research has shown that highly sensitive brains are activated differently means our brains are different, which means by definition, we are neurodivergent. Neurodivergent just means our brains operate differently from the neurotypical, which again, I've said, I'm not sure that exists. There are lots of different data out there that say that X number of people or X percentage of people are neurodivergent. I think those numbers are all wrong. I think that neurodivergence is far, far higher than what any official data source is gonna tell us. I've seen other experts talk about 75% of the population is neurodivergent. One said even up to 90%. I actually agree with those numbers. I don't have any scientific basis for that other than observation of the world. And
ooh, you beat me to it. Damn it, you beat me to it. I was going to say, I think I know the answer to the question I'm going to ask, but is it because if my twin, two bad examples, but I'm going to use it. My twin brother, my best friend, was standing right next to me. We have lived completely two different worlds because everything is seen through what's taken in, the brain, whatever. And then, like you said earlier, right? We take in 50 billion trillion bits of information. I'm exaggerating. Bits of information. I think you said 10 million somewhere in there. And then we start, what do we really need? What do we need? So now I'm standing literally inches from you and seeing the world completely different because I'm processing what happened differently. That's what you're talking about, right?
yes.
A part of it? Oh, there's more then. There's more, please.
That's a different perspective than what I was thinking about. So yes, let me go back to neurodivergence for a second. So
gotcha.
The trait is genetic. We are born with our brains the way they are.
Okay.
I have ADHD. One of the things that I learned just a few years ago as a 50-something woman, I learned that I have ADHD.
I do too.
Why a lot more older women in particular are learning this now and not when we were kids. I'll tangent because this is important and may be important for people in your audience. When you hit perimenopause and menopause, obviously we know there are a lot of hormonal shifts going on. The drop in estrogen that happens at that stage for women can exacerbate existing ADHD traits that we may never have known about. And we may never have known about them for a lot of reasons. I grew up being told I was gifted. I went to a school for gifted kids. I was a high achiever. I was not hyperactive. I didn't bounce around in my seat. I always did my assignments. I always knew the answers to things. I always did well in classes and tests and school in general. I would never have been a candidate that a doctor would have said, let's go get her tested for ADHD. Because when I grew up, the only people who were associated with ADHD were little white boys.
Yes.
And only little white boys who misbehaved or were really hyperactive, because that's what we thought ADHD was. Now we know it is way different than that, and it can manifest in lots of different ways. And it can manifest differently depending on your gender and depending on hormones and a lot of different things. So when I experienced that hormonal shift, traits started coming out that had been buried basically all my life. And I started to say, wait a second, this is not normal. And that's one of the reasons why a lot more of us are being diagnosed with ADHD.
Stop there. So a lot more people are being diagnosed with ADHD now because of what you just said?
A lot more women in middle age are. There are also a lot of other people who are not women, who are not in middle age, who are being diagnosed now just because our understanding has progressed. This is what you were talking about. We're a lot more sophisticated in our understanding of what ADHD looks like, how it might manifest. But ADHD isn't the only type of neurodivergence. There are tons of other types. As I said, high sensitivity itself is a form, and there is a school of thought that high sensitivity is actually an ableist term for autism. Now, that's a whole other street we could go down. The more I learn, the more I suspect that that's actually probably true.
And also, autism is a scale. I actually have interviewed or talked to several, and a couple of them have their own show about autism because they're autistic. And so that makes sense. I've never thought about that, but you're on. That's clickable. That's something big right there. It's a scale, right?
Well, it's not a scale; it's a spectrum. And
a spectrum. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. That was bad of me. Sorry. A spectrum. Yeah, you're right.
Spectrum. And what that means is it's not. It's a continuum, but it's also every autistic person is autistic in different ways. So
yes.
And there may be, what I learned was that I have autistic traits. Mine are considered probably subclinical, so I wouldn't be it wouldn't be obvious. I've taken a bunch of self-assessments and they're kind of all over the place. But there are certain traits that are specifically autistic traits that I have that now make sense to me, especially with the ADHD. So there's another trait called ADHD, which is a combination of autism and ADHD.
I've never heard that. I've never heard that. That's crazy.
It's ADHD. So you're just inserting a little U. And it is becoming more common. There are people who have shows about this too that I've seen. And I put a lot of resources around this in my book. Learning about these things and learning that we are neurodivergent can, first of all, help us look back on patterns in our past. Patterns with jobs, patterns with relationships, patterns with the way we lived in our homes, with our families.
The people you choose, is that part of that? No, that's not. That's different. Why do I keep getting the same person?
It could be, but it's also, yes, that feeds into it. But it's also more about our behavior and our responses to things and how we have conducted ourselves. And, I've had a ton of jobs and I've lived in a ton of countries and a ton of, I hate moving. I really, really hate the process of moving. It's a pain in the ass, right?
Yes. Okay.
But I keep choosing to do it, whereas a lot of people who don't like moving would just choose to stay in one place.
Yeah.
I don't do that because I love new experiences. I love being immersed in other cultures. So this is a perfect example of where my ADHD traits and my autistic traits come into conflict with each other. The autistic trait is I like routine. I like things to stay the same. I like what's familiar to me. I don't like a lot of change. I don't like a lot of disruption. The ADHD is I love excitement. I love change. I love new things. I love doing things differently.
Okay, gotcha.
So then you have the two of them together, and this confuses the hell out of people. 2015 was the first year that the World Health Organization agreed that the DSM, the diagnostic, manual of the manual of diagnosis that doctors use, could have that a person could be diagnosed with both ADHD and autism at the same time. Before 2015, that wasn't accepted. It was thought that they canceled each other out. You could only have one or the other.
Kind of makes you think how little we know. I mean, science is getting big now. It's awesome. It's much we're learning. So we've learned probably more in the last 10 years than the previous 100, which is an unfair statement because technology is growing. So we're getting this stuff better and better now. Absolutely. So that makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah. So the main message that I want to leave people with before we jump into the questions is it can help. Learning about all of this and what affects you particularly can help you, first of all, make more sense of past patterns. Second of all,
about what past patterns? Is that what you said? Past patterns?
Past patterns, exactly. Like the relationships and the moves and the jobs and the things like that. Gotcha. And helps you give yourself grace. A lot of us, especially those of us who are highly perceptive, have very high standards and very high expectations, especially for ourselves. For other people too, but often especially for ourselves. It is very
beyond what's reasonable, even
beyond what's reasonable. Extreme expectations. And because we are focused on the details and several steps ahead and a lot of different things. This, in my case, and in the case of all of the clients that I've worked with, allows us to give ourselves some grace. This is the way we are wired. It is the way we were built and the way we were born. And yes, we could also get into there are changes that can happen to your brain in the course of your life that you weren't born with. But
can I add something in here? Is it the ADH brain? Now you're adding to this a little bit with the autism, but specifically because we do a lot of work with that kind of stuff. We don't do work with it. We have people that work in it, like you, experts come in. But in the brain, you talked about this a little bit. The brain is wired different for an ADHD. It's a different wiring. It's physically a different wiring. Now it's curious. I assume the autism is the same sort of thing,
also different
but
wiring. Yeah.
Also different wiring. But now you're talking about autism with ADHD, and we're learning about this, so we probably don't have a lot of depth in it. But is that another set of different kind of, or is it the two kind of blended? I mean, it's a different brain completely.
Again, every brain is different.
Well, yeah, I know that, but you know what I mean, though.
One of the things that we're learning is that there is known to be a very high percentage of co-occurrence between different forms of neurodivergence. So let's use ADHD and autism as an example. There is, and the percentages differ, but there is known to be a very large possibility of co-occurrence between the two of them. So if you have one, there's a much higher chance that you have the other. One of them may be very obvious in the way you carry yourself and the way you show up in the world, and one of them may not be. Or they may both just conflict with each other all the time. I mean, it's different. But there are other forms too. I mean, dyslexia and there's a version of dyslexia with numbers, dyscalculia, which is a hard word to pronounce. And
I know somebody who had that.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that have it, and most of them have learned to mask. And masking is one of the things I talk a lot about in the book, because when we get back to burnout, there is a phenomenon called neurodivergent burnout, and it is different from common everyday generic burnout. And one of the things that is known to cause neurodivergent burnout is having to mask for your entire life. It is putting on
makes sense.
And not being who you are authentically. And that it takes energy, it takes, your brain, it takes all kinds of resources that you could be using to actually live your life. So, I mean, that's a whole other thing we could get into, but I know that there are people waiting with questions, so I would love to get to it.
Well, I guarantee you we're getting back everything you're saying, not everything, but I guarantee you we're going to be revisiting some of those subjects, because I've been scanning through here, and you got some real firecracker interest going on here. Todd Martin, for instance, says and you kind of already saw this a little bit. How can highly sensitive, now some of the things go into like work spots. One of them was interest, a couple down here. I don't see it right now, but also in that you talked about teams being successful. Well, also what if you're entering a new person who's sensitive? I think somebody's got a job coming in or is walked into a situation with a highly, what do you say, competitive? No, it was a different word, but include emotional skills. Okay, I'll get to it. I can't remember the exact thing, but a high pressure team. Okay. So that's going to be an interesting thing. That's 7 or so down. Todd Martin, I love this stuff, man. It's so cool to, this job for me is this job. this show is, for me, is very easy because if I don't understand something, I'm the safety net. I ask questions. You got terminology, you have expertise, all that. But what's really cool about this is all of a sudden, over time we built this up actually pretty quick, but people are coming on and they're asking questions, and a bunch of them, I do research. I'm not a perfect person, but I do research, and I would like to come in so that I don't have to be perfected or practiced. I can, just glimpse off of something and push that out a little bit if we haven't done that. But these damn guests, I mean, these audience members, I can sit back after a minute and go, well, this is what Todd thinks. And what do you think of, because that makes it, these guys are smart and it makes the show so much more fun. To me, it does anyway. So how can highly sensitive women, now I know you said you also talk to men, but let's say both of them here, because I think we were really only talking about more women, but build confidence in fast-paced environments. And you talked about that in your own journey, right?
Yeah, and I didn't talk about confidence as much because it's a tricky subject. And one of the things that a lot of my clients come to me with is, I know I'm smart, but I'm not listened to. I'm not heard in my environment. How can I be, how can I be more heard? How can I be more listened to? How can I have more of an impact? And that directly affects their confidence. So
yes,
this is a huge subject, and I would love to talk with Todd about this if he'd like to reach out to me, and we can talk about it, directly.
Well, he's going to have your contact information. So I'll repeat that, please, people. This is some really dynamic stuff as the speakers that we have. And I know I'm saying this like I'm giving advice, but I'm only saying it because I know they're going to. So I sound good when I give advice to people. I know they're already going to do it. It's an easy advice to give. But yeah, I'm sure that go ahead.
Absolutely. I would love, I can give you a few answers here, but it's a complicated subject, and it is very much so. Depends on the specifics of the environment. So I would say one of the things is to know yourself, know what your strengths are, know what you love doing, know what you're contributing, and the value that you bring to the organization. If you have a good rapport with your manager, there are ways to broach this topic and get your manager to support you in changing the dynamics a little bit so that you have more opportunity to contribute in the ways that work for you. So one of the things I think about is meetings. Meetings are like the scourge of the corporate workplace, right? And especially in a fast-paced environment, in a tech environment, you can be in environments where you literally have back-to-back meetings.
Well, sometimes they have meetings to set up meetings. That's the one that drives me nuts.
Sometimes they do. But my point is, there are people set them up without a lot of thought. They don't send out agendas. They don't necessarily think, who are the people who really need to be in this meeting versus let's just invite, the whole organization.
Yep.
There are ways to make meetings more inclusive and more accessible for everyone, regardless of their style of contributing, regardless of their style of processing information. One of those is to send agendas out in advance so that everybody has time to process the topics that are going to be discussed. If there are decisions that need to be made, talk about those decisions in the agenda that you're sending out, so that everybody can think about their point of view, their perspective, research that they've got backing something up, anything they need to help contribute to that conversation. That's not something that the person themselves is going to do. It's a culture change. And that's why this is a complicated question that I would love to be able to talk with Todd about.
All right.
But the confidence comes down to understanding who you are and what you bring to the conversation, looking back at your own achievements, at the successes that you've had, knowing where you are, what is a good fit for you.
Know your lane, right?
I don't love that language. because that makes it sound like you can't get out of your lane. I believe in crossing lanes. It's not about lanes. It's about finding the right environmental fit for you, where you are going to be valued and appreciated for the contributions that you can make.
What does that look like then? What does that look like then?
Well,
I mean, if you're talking about,
it might look like leaving a job or leaving a company if they don't value you. If you cannot, okay, so let's say you're in a company where you love the culture, you love the mission, but you're on a team that never lets you talk, never lets you speak up, never lets you contribute. And you can't establish a rapport with your manager, or your manager just doesn't care. And
that's a miserable place to work.
And there are a lot of them out there. It's a very, very common scenario. There are a couple of things that you can do. One of them is look around at other parts of the company and see where your skills and your abilities and your interests intersect and where they might be able to use you. And see if you can approach another leader in a different part of the organization and say, look, I'm not finding this a fit. I don't feel like I can make the kind of contribution I really am able to make in this organization. I would love to talk with you about your needs, and here's what I can offer you. And there are ways to structure those conversations and to create those invitations. One possibility is called job crafting, where you basically write your own job description and you make it around the contributions that you know you can make and contributions you may have made elsewhere before. You can show records of your success. But again, you have to have a leader who's open to that.
So when you talk about that crafting right there, is that for yourself that you can better explain that, or is that for like a working into a resume? I mean, I use this term. What does that look like? What does that look like?
It can be all of those things. It doesn't look in one particular way. I have a client right now who I am working with to craft a job for herself. She doesn't want to leave the company that she's in, but it's gone through a lot of changes, none of which have been positive. She is brilliant. She's empathetic. Her team loves her, but she is stuck under a leader who just will not give her the time of day and is making life really hard for her. So she is looking at the organization as a whole. She sees gaps and holes that need to be filled that would make the company more successful. She knows how to contribute to those gaps and to fill those gaps. So what I am recommending, what she and I have been working on, is crafting a resume and a story around what she can do for the organization if she were moved to a different place in a different role, and how and what she could create that would then benefit all of the teams and all of the organizations, because it's something they don't even have now and they need. And she can show why they need it, what she can do, what the projected results would be. So that's one example of job crafting.
That's powerful in itself. I mean, if you work in an organization, you're doing your thing or whatever, and then you go to a leader and there's one thing about throwing bombs, and then there's another thing that says, I really want to be able to be more part of or into the organization, and I'm. This is how I think. But that alone, not only for yourself. I see why you said that before when I asked that. Not only for yourself, but what a awesome president, somebody that deserves that as a leader. Some leader who deserves that is going to be, we gotta get you over here. You want to run the division? I mean, that's unusual.
It can be hard. So going back to the confidence thing,
it's challenging. It's confidence,
especially if you have been basically placed out because of your personality, because you might be more sensitive. So highly perceptive people tend to be very sensitive to feedback. We take feedback very personally. There is actually something called
sensitivity training.
No, sensitive. I just lost it completely. I'll
I
think of it later and I'll send it to
Trust
you.
me,
It's
I'm with you.
a type of dysphoria that is very common with ADHD and some other types of neurodivergence and with highly sensitive people that makes us take feedback very personally. If you are seen that way in an organization, it's very hard. It can be very hard to find a leader who is open to what you have to offer. And that is what takes a toll on people's confidence.
Wow.
I would honestly say that working with a coach or working with a therapist can be very, very helpful in raising in raising your confidence. And coaching is definitely not therapy. I know a lot of people sort of conflate or confuse the two. They are very, very different.
They are.
In terms of confidence, I would actually recommend a coach and not a therapist for a number of reasons. But
yes.
There's so many different things that I want to say right now. I'm struggling with figuring out which way to go.
I'll tell you what. Let me do this. I'm going to add a couple of things because you're walking in the lines, in the cracks. You're covering the cracks of a couple of things coming here. And I hear you saying, there's so many different things I want to go. We could tie a couple of things here. So what is the first step to recognizing you're highly perceptive at work? And then Olivia, which by S. Bradley, but Mr. Bradley, appreciate that. Olivia, do you believe leadership training should include emotional regulation skills? And I want to add one more just because they kind of blend. What are your favorite daily self-care tools for HSPS in leadership? I think you've got a really nice little playground to be able to add a lot of color in between the layers here, which kind of work together, in my opinion. But I'm no expert.
Absolutely. Okay. So the first one you asked about was self-assessments. Basically, how do you know that you're highly perceptive? There is a website that is I think it's .org, not .com, but actually I can take a very, very quick look here while I'm talking.
God, you know what? This time has gone by so fast. It's amazing.
I
didn't even realize it. My God, I'm being unsensitive right now. I need your training. I just looked at the clock. We've already gone almost an hour and 10 minutes. I was like, we're just kind of opening up. That this has been very fun. It's a very flowing. It's very sensitive. A very. It's just so easy to listen to that because of the way it goes. And all of a sudden I looked up, I go, holy crap, we've already gone an hour? Holy cow. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm gonna put another resource in the
okay, gotcha.
So there is a website called sensitivityresearch.com that has a number of self-assessments on it. I would recommend taking the updated one for adults, and it's quick and it will give you a real sense of whether you are considered on the more sensitive side, the more perceptive side. Now, again, everybody who is highly perceptive in different ways. So some of them may resonate with you and some of them may not resonate with you. It doesn't mean that you're not sensitive or not perceptive, but there are a lot of people who are more emotionally sensitive and receptive and don't have the same issues that I have with sound, for example. If I am sitting in a meeting, if the gardener were here today on the other side of this room and we're doing his lawn tools and the leaf blowing and the whatever, that would drive me up a wall. Just the noise that comes from that, it sets my nervous system on edge in a way that is very hard for me to recover from. Wow. Not everybody who is sensitive to sound.
True.
So there are lots of different ways. But anyway, that self-assessment is one tool that you can use. I'm also just going to say, here's a plug, buy the book because there are more tools in the book.
No. Hey, that's what we're here to do. I mean, this is, you're passing information, but we don't want it to end here. We don't want the flow to end here. Right. I mean, some people really can't afford to have and watch this show over and over and over again. So that's why we do that thing. So your book, and that is the self-assessment test that you see on the screen there.
Yep.
And
And
that
that
is your
great.
contact information.
Perfect. And I'm going to go to, so the second question was, I think, from Olivia, and she asked about should leadership training include emotional regulation training, emotional regulation skills? It's an awesome question. I would probably want to dive a little bit deeper into what you're considering emotional regulation skills. So
Yeah, that is an interesting term, isn't it?
It's very interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. So for example,
thank you, Olivia.
One example could be if you are someone who is an HSP or a highly sensitive person or highly perceptive or neurodivergent in any way, and someone in a meeting in a public place, your leader says something really negative to you, really thoughtless and inconsiderate and harsh in front of all of your colleagues and your peers.
Okay.
That is something that a lot of people have trouble dealing with.
It's really hard. Okay.
So how do you learn how to respond to that kind of
there we go.
event or activity? And should that be part? That is what I'm assuming Olivia is asking. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it is. That sounds right. I mean, that's a really interesting concept where you're talking about. Go on. I just wanted to throw that in there.
And I think I love the idea of including it in leadership training. The reason I'm hesitating is there are so many people who don't get any kind of leadership training whatsoever. That is next level. And it's also very dependent on the person because they may get triggered by certain things and not by other things. It's one of those things. I believe every leader should have a coach, honestly. I think that every executive should have a coach. And that is something that the coach can work with them on. And I think it should be paid for by the company. I mean, it's not always. But, sometimes they have L&D budgets, and that's something that you could
They do. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. Training budget. Yeah.
Yeah, there are so many basic things that need to be included in leadership training that aren't. I want to say this is basic, but it's not even as basic. I don't know. I need to think about that one. I've never been asked that question before, and it's a great question.
It's a great question because what everything you're talking about is and again, you can't really answer. Well, okay. There would be different parameters. You've worked in big Fortune 500 companies and that. And then there's mom and pop shops. And then there's a billion examples in the middle.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying is they've got different priorities. There's 15 leaders in one company and the owner's the leader in the other.
Exactly.
There's a range.
There could be 300 in one company.
Could be 300. Oh my God. Yeah. Worldwide companies, all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to hold to what I said. I do believe that every leader should have a coach, but some companies are more willing than others to provide that, right? So Olivia, the honest answer is yes, I think it should be. I'm not sure that's a reasonable request for a lot of companies, but I think every company should provide ways for leaders to be able to get to learn those and develop those skills, whether it is.
And looking at it from a corporate view, yes, you're improving that person if that is provided, but better than that, you're improving the company. The company's becoming stronger and better, and because that person's stronger and better, especially being a leader, right? I mean, that's
everyone is, and especially if everyone is starting from the same place and they're all getting that.
Yes,
you are increasing morale. You're increasing employee engagement. You're increasing cooperation and collaboration even among leaders.
Yes,
so, I mean, it's absolutely. Should it be if in an ideal world? Of course, absolutely. There's no question in my mind. Is that reasonable given where we are today? It's probably not the first thing that I would include, in more general corporate training. But
well, and there's so much. I don't know how old you are, but I've lived through a couple of societal shifts. As the pendulum goes one way and goes all the way. I don't know why it doesn't stay in here when we adjust things, but we go from here to over here, it's, and, society shifts like that, pretty big shifts. And right now there's so much stuff going on as far as how people and hold on. Sorry. God, I'm getting choked up over this conversation. It's really catching my heart. But there's so much training going on now, and it there can get to also a point. That's not this at all, and I'm not. But just when you talk about some companies can have the appetite for it or not, sometimes if you get so deep into things, you got to start clearing some other stuff out. Otherwise, the leaders are going to be in classes all day, training all day on this subject and that subject and that subject and that subject.
And that's exactly what I was thinking. I love the question, because the question is, yes, absolutely, emotional regulation skills should be taught to every leader everywhere. And
yes.
Yet, where we are right now, leaders aren't trained in anything for the most part. A lot of them.
Well, they're not trained on anything to do with the empowering of the company, but there's a lot of sensitivity training for other subjects that have nothing to do with. Well, no, let me finish. And then going beyond that, I think what Olivia said here. We do a lot of things overdone, and just human nature, more like this society, meaning U.S. or different countries, and sometimes they overdo things, that pendulum thing. But at this point, the reason I brought that up, there are so many, all day in training, is the reason I brought that up is because as I think about what Olivia is saying here, as you were answering it and going through it and talk and. I think if somebody's going through this training, it kind of folds into a lot of other stuff that leaders are expected by their companies to influence their team with. I mean, if you have this kind of training, you could probably knock off 3 or 4 other potential trainings that you need, because now you're able to start looking at people as people and how that relationship can go and how you can bring the most out of it. That's all I was trying to say, is you could probably take out some of the other training and really make it a lot more efficient, or not. Sounds like I'm going to hear no.
No. So that's actually why I said it depends on what she means by emotional regulation skills, because I think of that as regulating myself, not like regulating my own reactions to things. It has nothing to do with how I deal with other people. It has nothing to do with how I deal as a leader. Those we still need.
Indirectly, though, it does. Indirectly, because how you feel about yourself. Remember, we talked about
it's not about how I feel about myself. So go back to the example that I was talking about. If I'm a leader sitting among other leaders and I'm in a meeting and my boss, say I report to the CEO, and the CEO is an asshole, and the CEO starts, yelling at me, because this has happened before. The emotional regulation that I think she was asking about was, how do I regulate myself in response? Now, the leader has a whole thing that he needs to learn about regulating.
Yes, well, that's true.
It can go either way, but again, it comes down to the definition and what is involved in that.
Well, the way I'm kind of walking alongside you on this is if we're talking about leadership training, and the example you just gave is you're in a group of leaders and the CEO comes down, you have to learn how to handle that. Well, that goes back to the technically not a leader. That's, you know what I mean? If you're training leaders in how to do this, it's how they react to their, and how you are as a person goes through goes through it in who you are to them, and how you, I use word them, but you know what I mean, your team, and how you lead, and observe how to get the most out of them. Through that training, you're learning that ability to be more open to being sensitive, reading the room, going back to the very beginning, and being able to lead better, right?
Agreed.
Or both.
I think it's really complex, and I think I would love
It
to
is.
go to the next question because I think we've spent a lot of time on this one. That's okay.
What are your favorite daily self-care tools for HSP in leadership? Let's put a couple together here again. I kind of like that. Now Daniel's going off on you. He's got like 1, 2, and then somebody else 3, 4. He's I think a couple of them are comments, but I think Daniel's working on something here because I haven't read all of them, but he's got a lot of questions for you. Daniel, what advice would you give a sensitive new manager? And this is the one I was talking about earlier. New manager with a high pressure team. That's a good question.
It is. Let me talk about the self-care first, and then I will get to Daniel's question.
Yes, please. Yes.
So self-care is a huge topic that I am really, really passionate about because a lot of people think about it as, taking daily bubble baths or a spa day or whatever. Self-care to me is listening to your body, your heart, your mind, your soul, and doing what they are asking you to do. And that's going to be different for all of us.
Yes.
I talk about, and there's actually a concept that I sort of have adopted from a woman named Ingrid Fettel-Lee. She used to be a corporate designer. Now she talks about joy, and she's written a book called Joyful. She talks about micro moments of joy, and I love this, and I work with my clients on this. Joy does not have to be expensive. It does not have to take a lot of time. And especially if you are highly perceptive and you note little things and you take in more from your environment than other people. Where I used to live, I had a big avocado tree right outside my window. And all day long, there were tiny little birds that would come and sit in different parts of that tree. And all I needed to do for a micro moment of joy was turn my head in between meetings and watch some of the birds hopping around in that tree.
I know what I feel that. I see what you're saying. Go ahead.
It can be petting a cat.
Yeah.
It can be doing a little happy dance. It can be playing one song. It can be doodling. I have a client who keeps a tiny little sketch pad on the corner of her desk. And during meetings, she just doodles. She's still paying attention. But this is a way of getting out her energy and generating joy at the same time.
Absolutely.
So to me, the most valuable tools are the ones that work for you, for the individual. And you need to do a little bit of work to figure out what brings me joy. It might be something you haven't done for a long time. It might be something you do every day. I encourage people to actually schedule these into their day. Buffer your calendar. Put a 15-minute break in between meetings so that you can go walk outside. Get some sunlight, watch birds, pet your cat, do whatever it is that you need to do. And I give it, again, I'm going to go back to my book because I give a bunch of examples in the book. It is doing what your body, your mind, your heart, and your spirit or your soul are telling you they need. Those are the best self-care tools for you. And again, this is something I could go off on. I have all kinds of suggestions, but it really depends on the individual.
It does. So big.
So I'm going to jump to Daniel's. Could you go back to the other one? Not the companies attracting and retaining, but the first one about a sensitive.
Okay. Oh, are you talking about? Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. So the advice that I would give is, I give the same advice to every new manager and new leader, regardless of whether they're sensitive or not. But I think that it works even better for sensitive new managers. And that is start with a listening tour. And what I mean by listening tour is
that's a good name. I like that.
Find out who all of your key stakeholders are. So these could be colleagues, they could be direct reports, they could be people a level above you, people that you are going to be interacting with on a regular basis who depend on your role for some reason, or whose support you are going to need at some point. All of your stakeholders, write them down in a list. Come up with a list of questions, and the questions may vary from person to person. But in general, what you're trying to get at is, who is the person that you're talking to? What is their role? What are they hoping for from you in your new role? What are their needs that are not being met currently? And how do they want to be able to collaborate? You can get so much information from all of this. Start with a little bit about you. Look, I'm new in this role. This is where I came from. I really want to hear about you. It's not.
Are these all one-on-one? One-on-one is what you're suggesting, saying not
do it.
Sure.
Absolutely. And it can be coffee, it can be lunch, it could be Zoom, it could be whatever works for you and your environment. But definitely one-on-one. It can be as little as 15 minutes. Don't give them your whole bio and background. Don't tell them all of the things that you've done before. It's not about
me, it's about them.
They may ask you when they've answered a bunch of your questions, and then it's fine. But this is all about showing them that you are here to listen to them, to find ways to collaborate with them in ways that will support their goals, because that is going to be the best way to create mutual support, interdependence, collaborative opportunities.
Nice.
Do that with as many people as you can do. And then you will have a huge amount of information. You'll probably have a lot of themes that overlap or repeat themselves, but you will have a lot of information and a way to start developing a strategy for moving forward. And at that point, it's fair to start gently if there are changes that need to be made. That may or may not be why you were brought into this role. But you have a huge amount of information, and you've built goodwill by proactively reaching out to all of these people who are going to be touched by your presence there. So that is one way to do it. And Daniel, please, again, feel free to reach out to me, personally, if you have more questions. How can companies attract and retain neurodivergent talent? By making, so there's so much to this question that I paused because I'm like, where do I want to go? So there are every stage of the of posting a job description, a job post, and of interviewing and of onboarding. Every one of those stages can be improved at most companies in order to attract and retain neurodivergent talent. And then some. It goes all the way, the whole life cycle. The first thing is when you are considering the job description itself, stop talking about culture fit. Stop talking about all of the brilliant, you want digital natives and you want this and you want that. Stop talking about what you want. Start talking about what the person in the role needs to achieve. Make the job description focused on the skills that you absolutely need to have to be able to do that job effectively and successfully. When you get rid of all of the other stuff, you are bringing in more people who are interested in doing what. That's the first thing. Then, instead of saying, we're open to this, be proactive about if we're looking for accommodation. If so job interviews make a lot of people very uncomfortable. There are people who aren't at their best when they are in an interview situation.
Sure.
Provide the information up front about the kinds of questions that they might be asked so that they can prepare. So it's not about testing someone. It's really about getting their knowledge and getting their skill. If you want to learn about a tricky situation that they've been in before and how they handled it, let them know that in advance so that they can think about what story they want to tell you and they can prepare it and make it nice and concise. Some people may need more time because they process more slowly. Tell them that if they want more time, that is something that you offer, and make it easy to request so that they don't feel like it's a stigma already on them if they need to request an accommodation. And there are endless ways to do this. Once you've got someone in the door, so the other part of the question, one was attract talent, another was retain talent.
Correct.
Think about every facet of your working environment. Do you offer flexible options? If everybody has to be in one location, do you allow people to come in at different times so that they might be able to avoid the worst of the traffic. Sometimes for highly sensitive people, dealing with a heavy traffic commute with accidents and all kinds of noise going on means that we get to the office in a state where we are already on high alert. We need to be able to de-escalate so that we can then function, because our nervous systems are already going on full speed. That is not a good way for an HSP, a highly sensitive or a highly perceptive person, to start out their workday and to be effective. Again, I talk about loads of ways to do this in my book. There's another book called The Canary Code by Ludmila Kraslova, who is autistic herself. It is an amazing book for companies to use. It goes into way more detail than I can get into here about ways that companies can attract and retain neurodivergent talent. But again, I'm happy to talk about this one-on-one.
Yeah, absolutely. That would make a lot of sense, because it's kind of a thank you, Daniel. And you've got a couple more questions coming from Daniel in a second. But S. Bradley here, are the tools to help HSP and track and manage energy levels at work, which is now. So what you were talking about is how to attract and retain.
Right.
Now, when you've been attracted and retained, now it's also, I mean, it's not all about what everybody does for you.
No,
I mean,
it's very much about managing yourself, and
that's what this really dives into a little bit. I love this question.
It's a great question. One of the most important things that HSPs can possibly do for themselves at work is know your own limits and put in buffers. Now, this is going to vary. Your ability to do this will vary depending on the kind of work you do and the kind of work environment you're in. If you are someone who is reliant on a calendar and all of your meetings go on that calendar, absolutely make sure that you can put in buffers. I put in 15 to 30 minute buffers in between all of my my meetings and my appointments. And that is a perfect opening for me to say, I actually have to leave in 10 minutes because I do have a meeting. You asked me before, I didn't think we were going to go this long, but I actually do have a meeting at 2:30 my time. So.
And you're in New York, right?
No, I'm on the West Coast.
Oh, you're in California. That's right.
Yeah. It's about 2:15 and I'm going to need to go because I have to have a buffer between my.
We got 3 questions after this. Let's jump on those and kick your ass out of here. Fair?
Okay. So timing, make sure that you can, any way that is possible to do this, give yourself breaks during the day, in between meetings, in between tasks. Make sure that you have enough water, make sure that you have enough food. We sometimes forget to eat because we're so conscientious and we're so responsible. We want to make sure we're doing everything for everyone else. The best tool that you can rely on is your body and what it's telling you. Don't ignore its signals. Exactly. When it's telling you need to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. When it's telling you you need more water, get more water. When it's telling you you need to eat, tell the person that's waiting on you, I'm sorry, but I really need to eat or I am not going to be able to help you. It is incredibly crucial. So,
oh my God, yes. So Daniel is backing up what you're saying right now. And he's like, thank you so much. I think there's somebody right there that is going into or dealing with something that really needed this episode today. Oh, here you go. Powerful episode. Thank you, Rachel. Daniel's been very exhilarated about I told you he had a bunch of questions in here, which we usually get multiple questions, but man, he's hooked into something here. You're probably going to hear from Daniel pretty quick, I'm guessing.
I would love to talk with Daniel. So yeah, I see Ronaldo's question. Is society
okay? Good, perfect.
More acceptable to the sensitive male than 20 years ago?
I think it is.
So Ronaldo, I'm going to be honest. It's not my area of expertise, the society end of things. I think it is, but that's just based on my own personal observation. And I would also say, without going into specifics of the political situation of the moment, I think it very much depends on the kind of culture you're in within the larger culture. So there are still very much places in the United States right now, and I'm just focusing on the U.S. may have people here from all over the world, but there are still definitely places where sensitivity is not as accepted in males.
Oh yeah.
I think that with Gen Z and the alphas that are coming up next, I think that we are going to see some very, very, very different dynamics in terms of more neurodivergent acceptance, more gender difference acceptance. People, the younger generations now are feeling much freer about, I am who I am, you can take it or leave it, I don't care, this is who I am and I'm not going to hide it. And that applies to, like I said, gender and the way our brains work and personalities in general. So I think yes, with the caveat that there are still areas where it's not, unfortunately.
Congratulations. I think you're going to make it on time. I think we are in good shape here.
Awesome.
I still want you to make a, final wrap up and, I want to stay in contact and all that. I usually ask people to stay in the green room and chat with, but I'm not going to, I know you're under
I need to take a break myself before my next meeting. So I would love to do that, but we can always chat afterwards too.
Absolutely. Go ahead and give a final thought and give a wave, and I'll throw you in the green room, and then you're on. Oh, since you're hungry, you can eat anything in the green room except for the green M&Ms.
Thank you. Noted.
Right.
Okay. I think what I want to leave people with is, regardless of the messages that you might have heard growing up, regardless of the challenges that you might see if you're in a workplace that is not conducive to, inclusion or inclusivity, you have gifts, you have superpowers. You need to figure out what they are, embrace them, leverage them, and they will help you do two things. One is deal more effectively with the challenges that are the other side of that coin. And the other is give yourself more grace. We don't do that enough. We're just here for this lifetime, folks. Whether you believe in multiple lifetimes or not, all we have is right now. And it's not worth it to spend this lifetime just, listening to other people's opinions about anything that, about what's wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with us. Our brains all work differently.
Love that.
So,
man, great show. Thank you. Let's stay in contact. Maybe talk some more about some of the, diving a little into, because there's a lot to this subject and we didn't get there, and you got to go do your gig. And I'm going to give everybody a wave, and I'm going to kick your ass over into the green room. Fair enough?
Good. Thanks, everybody. You have my contact information, and I would love to talk.
Yes. All right. We'll talk soon. All right. So I told you, today's a great day, man. And it's 4:30 here now. So I actually am going to have to leave for Oklahoma pretty soon. One thing I really love about this show is there's so many we talk about this, different approaches and the way people come on to express the subject matter at hand. And sometimes and when it's the same subject, it's nice to have those different not kaleidoscope, those different views and viewpoints. And here was one that was obviously unique in its approach and very, very, very dynamic in today's world. And some of the acceptance and actually kind of changing and evolving again. I mean, we talk about society making shifts in how they how people view themselves, and the gender stuff and all of these things that we deal with in society. I think it's continuing to evolve again, and it's very exciting to see the difference, the colors in between the layers, the different approaches. And that's what we do here on Insights and Straight Talk. We love these topics. We love the fact that our family, our community here is so thirsty and have a place to come to at Insights and Straight Talk with Rod Duff and producer Barbie. And you know, if you guys weren't here, even earlier, I'd be out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.